A summer wind moves across a valley in southern Colorado. Slow, dry, bleached almost white by 3 months of drought. Above the valley, the San Juan Mountains rise on three sides. Dark green, snow-tipped, silent. Below them, a small town sits baking in the noon light. A white church at the end of the main road. Every hitching post taken, every window open, every pew inside packed shoulder to shoulder. At the altar, a young woman stands in a dress that does not belong to her. 19 years old, honey blonde hair pinned back with borrowed pins, green eyes fixed on the collar button of the preacher. Beside her, a stranger, tall, broad, sun-brown. He has not looked at her once. She is counting. 11 minutes. That is how long it takes to hand her life to a man she has never spoken to, for a debt she did not sign. And up on the mountain above them, three other men are waiting in a house she does not yet know exists. She stood at the altar in a dress that did not belong to her. 19 years old, hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The lace at her wrists trembled anyway. She could not stop it. She had tried. The man beside her was tall, broad, silent as a locked door. He had not looked at her once. Not when the preacher opened the Bible. Not when the ring slid onto her finger like a piece of cold weather. Not when the words "for better or for worse" crossed the space between them and became legally binding. Emmeline Hartwood counted the minutes, because counting was something she could do. Counting had a beginning and an end. Counting did not require her to feel anything. 11 minutes. That was how long it took to hand her life to a stranger. If this story pulls at something inside you, subscribe now and tell me in the comments what state you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey travels. The summer of 1878 came to Silver Fork Junction like a slow-burning judgment. The San Juan Mountains rose above the town on three sides, dark green in the low light, bone pale at the peaks where the last of the winter snow was still clinging on. The valley below baked. The cottonwoods along the main road had gone dry at the tips, and the sky was the kind of blue that offered nothing in return for looking at it. It was into that summer that Emmeline Hartwood became a wife. She was 19 years old. She had honey blonde hair the color of light through a jar of dark tea, eyes so green they looked painted, a small waist and a straight spine, and hands that had learned how to work. She was not the kind of beautiful that made men stop in the street. She was the kind that made them look twice and then wonder why they had. She had no father to walk her down the aisle. He had died 3 winters back. Broken lungs, broken heart. Broken by a debt he had signed to keep a roof over his daughter's head when the crop failed 2 years running. $340. That was the number. That was what her father's signature was worth on the day the man who held the note came knocking on her Aunt Vesta's door. Her Aunt Vesta was not a warm woman. She had never wanted the burden. And when the debt came calling, she had done the math out loud in front of Emmeline. She had said, "You can go to service. 7 years. Break your back for strangers." And then she had said the other thing, the thing that made Emmeline's stomach turn over sideways. "Or you can go to the Ravencroft place, up on the mountain." Because Ravencroft had offered. Because Ravencroft would settle the whole debt. Because Ravencroft needed a wife. Emmeline had asked one question. "Who is he?" Aunt Vesta had shrugged like the question did not matter. "They call him the Wolf of Ravencroft," she had said. "He lives up in the high country, keeps to himself, comes down 4 times a year for supplies and never says more than 5 words. Widowed, 2 years back. They say something in him died with the wife." Emmeline had asked, "And I would marry him." Aunt Vesta had said, "You would marry him, and the debt would be gone, and you would have a name and a roof. Most girls in your position end up worse." Emmeline had not answered that day. She had gone up to her room, and she had sat on the edge of the narrow bed she had slept in since she was 6 years old, and she had done the arithmetic her aunt had refused to do. Service meant 7 years. A widow's roof meant her whole life. But service meant 7 years of being no one. And a roof meant possibly being someone, even to a man who did not want her. She said yes on a Tuesday. She was married on a Saturday, and she had never once in 3 weeks of waiting met the man whose name she was about to take. The church was full. That surprised her. She had expected a dozen faces at most. Instead, every pew was packed. Every neck was craned. Silver Fork Junction had come out in force to watch a debt get paid in flesh and lace. She walked down the aisle alone, because there was no one to give her away, because she was not being given, she was being transacted. She held a small bunch of wild yellow columbine that Mrs. Halbrook, the boarding house widow, had cut from her yard that morning. She had tied the stems with a piece of clean twine, and she had told Emmeline she looked lovely. Emmeline had looked at herself in Mrs. Halbrook's small mirror and had thought only one thing: this is not how I imagined this day. Except she had never imagined this day. Girls like her did not imagine days like this. Girls like her worked. Girls like her kept their heads down. Girls like her did not have the luxury of imagining anything at all. She looked straight ahead as she walked. She kept her chin lifted. She did not let her eyes fill. The man at the altar came into focus at 15 feet. At 10 feet, she saw the shape of him. At 5 feet, she was standing beside him, and she was still not sure what she was looking at. He was tall, taller than she had guessed, broad through the shoulders in a way that had nothing to do with the coat he was wearing. The coat did not fit him. It was a borrowed coat. She could tell. His hair was dark brown and cut without vanity. His jaw was sharp. Close-cut beard, sun-brown skin, hands the size of dinner plates hanging at his sides, and his eyes. His eyes turned toward her for exactly 1 second, dark, almost black, and there was something in them she could not name. Not cruelty, not appetite, something quieter, something further inside. Then he looked at the preacher again, and whatever it was gone. The preacher spoke. She counted. 1, 2, 3. The way she used to count the stairs at night when she was small and afraid of the dark. Just get to the next number. The next number is something you can hold. She said her vows in a clear voice because she refused to give the packed church behind her the pleasure of watching her falter. She did not look at his face when she said the words. She looked at the loose collar button on the preacher's shirt. 11 minutes. That was the total. 11 minutes, and she was no longer Emmeline Hartwood. She was Mrs. Ravencroft. The preacher said the words about kissing the bride. The man beside her turned to look at her, and she braced, because that was what women did in that moment. They braced. He looked at her for a long, slow second. Then he nodded once, like a man closing a deal, and he offered her his arm. He did not kiss her. Somewhere behind her, a woman laughed. The reception was a scattering of cold chicken and lemonade in the churchyard. Half the town lingered. The other half had drifted off to more interesting business. Emmeline stood with a glass in her hand and watched her new husband move through the crowd like a man wading through cold water. He was polite. He said little. He did not come near her. She told herself this was fine. She told herself she had expected nothing else. "Well," said a voice at her elbow, "I suppose this is the best a girl in your situation could hope for." Sybil Merriweather, the dry goods store owner's wife, 52 years old, wide-hipped, sharp-eyed, a mouth that had been getting Silver Fork Junction into trouble for 3 decades. Emmeline turned her head, slowly. "A roof," Mrs. Merriweather went on. "A name, food on the table. Most girls in your position don't do half so well." "Is that so?" Emmeline said. "He's odd, of course. Everyone knows that. But odd is better than mean. That's what I always say." "Do you?" "You'll have to manage him. Men like that need managing. Keep the house clean. Don't ask questions. Stay out of his way. You can have a decent enough life if you're sensible about it." Emmeline took one slow sip of her water. "Thank you," she said, in a tone that thanked no one for anything. Mrs. Merriweather opened her mouth to say something else. She did not get the chance, because at that exact moment, a shadow fell across Emmeline's shoulder, and her new husband was standing beside her, holding his hat, not looking at Mrs. Merriweather, looking at Emmeline. "The wagon's ready," he said. His voice was low, not loud, not soft, just certain. And Emmeline had the distinct feeling, just for a second, that he had been standing close enough to hear. "All right," she said. She set down her glass. She picked up the small bundle that held everything she owned worth keeping. She did not say goodbye to Mrs. Merriweather. She did not say goodbye to anyone. She followed her husband out to the road where a solid bay horse was hitched to a flatbed wagon. He helped her up onto the seat. His hand was very large and very rough. He let go the instant she was settled. He went around to the other side. He climbed up. He gathered the reins. They drove out of Silver Fork Junction in silence. Emmeline looked straight ahead. She had promised herself she would not cry. She was a woman who kept her promises, and she counted that for something. The road climbed for the first hour through scrub, pale, prickly grass, junipers no taller than a child. The bay horse, whose name she did not yet know, moved at a steady walk that did not tire and did not hurry. She did not know her husband's first name. She realized this somewhere around the second mile. She had said the vows. She had signed the paper. She was legally his wife. And she did not know his first name. She had heard people call him Ravencroft, just Ravencroft, like a mountain. She was married to a mountain. She almost laughed. She did not, but almost. The road climbed. The scrub gave way to aspens, then to pines, then to spruce so dark green they looked black. The air changed. It got thinner. It got cleaner. It smelled of something Emmeline had never smelled before. Wet stone, cold sap, a wind that had come off snow. The San Juans rose around them. She had never been in the mountains. She had lived her whole life in the valley below. And this was another country. This was another world. The trees up here were serious trees. The rocks were serious rocks. Nothing here was for show. She was not sure yet whether she hated it. She was not sure yet whether she was allowed to like it. "You don't have to be afraid of me." The voice came out of the silence like a stone dropped in still water. She turned her head. Her husband was looking at the road, both hands on the reins, voice flat and matter-of-fact. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, which was mostly true. "Most people are," he said. "I'm used to it. I'm not most people." He glanced at her, just for a second, then back at the road. "No," he said. "Reckon you're not." And that was the last thing he said for the next 3 hours. But it was enough. Because a man who tells you not to be afraid is a man who has thought about whether you might be. And a man who has thought about it is not the same as a man who does not care. She made a note of it, in the quiet way a person notes something worth returning to, not to keep score, just so she would remember. Then she caught herself. She was not a woman with a filing cabinet in her head. She was a woman on a wagon going up a mountain with a stranger. She looked at the road. She let the trees blur past. And somewhere around the third hour, when the sun had gone gold and the shadows were long, he cleared his throat once, very quietly. "Wilder," he said. She turned. "What?" "My name," he said, still looking at the road. "It's Wilder." She looked at him. She looked at the way his knuckles rested on the reins. She looked at the coat that did not quite fit. She looked at the sharp line of his jaw and the very small crease at the corner of his eye that she had not noticed until now. "Wilder," she said. "Yeah. I'm Emmeline." "I know." A pause. "But thanks for saying it out loud," he added. And she thought, there is the man, whoever he actually is. He is in there somewhere. She looked back at the road. The ranch came into view at the end of a track that had stopped being a road about a mile back. She had expected something forbidding, something that matched the reputation. Dark walls, angry angles, a homestead that looked like the man who lived in it. What she saw instead was a long, low log house with a wide porch, a barn worn but solid, a kitchen garden tended by someone who cared, rows straight, weeds pulled, and beyond the barn a pasture where half a dozen horses stood in the long evening light with their heads down, a lantern glowing yellow at the porch window, mountains on 3 sides, dark and enormous and unhurried. A large gray dog appeared from around the barn, yellow eyes, watchful. He sat down 10 feet from the wagon and studied her. "That's timber," Wilder said, climbing down. "He won't bother you unless you want him to." "What happens if I want him to?" "A beat." "He follows you everywhere," Wilder said. "He's not subtle." Emmeline almost smiled. She looked at the dog looked at her. His tail moved. Once, reserved. "Hello, Timber," she said. The tail moved again. And then the door of the house opened. And Emmeline froze, because a man came out. And it was not Wilder. This one was slimmer, younger, sandy hair cut close, a face that had the ease of someone who had smiled a lot in his life. He was wiping his hands on a cloth, and behind him in the doorway stood a third man, taller, older, steel gray at the temples, a face that had been carved out of a long winter, eyes that swept the yard, the wagon, and her, cataloging everything, missing nothing. Emmeline sat very still on the wagon seat because nobody had told her. Nobody had told her about this. The younger one lifted a hand, almost apologetic. "You must be Emmeline." She could not answer for a second. "Yes," she said finally. "Corbin," he said. "Corbin Ashwell. Welcome home." The word home hit her sideways. The older one had not moved from the doorway. He tipped his chin. Just barely. "Malachi Dune," he said, voice like gravel and slow water. "Ma'am?" Emmeline turned her head, slowly, toward her husband. Wilder had come around to her side of the wagon. He was standing there with his hand on the wheel, watching her face. "You didn't tell me," she said, not accusing, just stating. Wilder's jaw moved, not much, but enough. "No," he said, "I didn't." "There are 3 of you." "There are." "You live here, all 3 of you." 8 years, same house. She looked at Corbin. She looked at Malachi. She looked back at Wilder. Her heart was doing something she did not have words for. Not fear, not exactly, something more complicated. Something like being handed a book you did not know had chapters. "You should have told me," she said quietly. "Yes," Wilder said. "I should have." He did not look away. He did not defend himself. He just said it. And she thought, all right, that is at least honest. Corbin came down off the porch. He walked to the wagon. He offered her his hand, palm up, open. "Come inside," he said. "It's been a long day. We won't crowd you." She looked at his hand. She looked at the mountains going purple behind him, and she took it because there was nowhere else to go, and because his hand was warm and steady, and he did not squeeze. The inside of the house surprised her. She had expected the deep neglect of 3 men living alone. What she found was clean, not the deep clean of women who cared about clean, but the deliberate clean of 3 men who had thought about how this room might look to someone seeing it for the first time. The floor had been swept. The table had been wiped. A blue crockery jug of wild columbine sat on the table, purple and yellow, cut that morning, still fresh. Emmeline stopped in the middle of the main room. She looked at the flowers. She looked at the flowers for a long moment. Corbin was setting her bundle down. Malachi had gone into the kitchen and was pouring water from a pitcher. Wilder stood in the doorway with his hat in his hand. "Your room," Wilder said. He nodded toward a door on the left side of the short hallway. "That's yours. Ours are at the end. Mine's on the right. Corbin's on the left. Malachi's the small one across." She looked at him. "There's a bolt on your door," he said. "Inside, so you can lock it from within." He said it like a man stating a fact about the geography of the house. Not for gratitude, not for effect, just so she would know how the house worked. Emmeline stood very still. Something in her chest moved. Something she had not prepared for. Not warmth, not yet. Something more like the feeling of having braced for a blow that did not come. Her whole body had been ready for the impact. And when the impact did not arrive, her muscles took a slow second to understand they could put themselves down. All right, she said, when she could trust her voice. Kitchen's got what you need, Wilder said. There's bread and cold venison on the low shelf. You should eat. You haven't eaten since this morning. Not a question. He was right, she had not. I'll eat, she said. He nodded once. He put his hat on the hook by the door, and he went outside to see to the horse. Corbin lingered. He's not a talker, he said, quiet, kind. Neither is Malachi most of the time. Don't take the silence personal. It's just how they run. And you, she said. He grinned, just briefly. I talk enough for all three of us, he said. Ask anyone. Then he was gone too. Emmeline stood alone in the main room of the house that was now her home. She walked to the door on the left. She opened it. The room was small, a narrow bed, a wooden chest, a window with a cotton curtain, a blue crockery jug on top of the chest, more wild columbine, purple and yellow, a folded quilt on the bed that had clearly been washed and pressed for her arrival. She stood in the doorway. She looked at the flowers. She thought about the words. You don't have to be afraid of me. She thought about a man who had driven down to Silver Fork Junction for a wedding he had not wanted, and driven back up for a marriage he had not chosen, and who had, in between those two things, picked flowers, purple and yellow, and put them in a jug, in a room that had a bolt on the inside of the door. She thought, I do not know what kind of men you are, but I am going to have to find out. She ate standing at the kitchen shelf, bread and cold venison, looking out the small window at the darkening shapes of the mountains. The food was simple, and she was hungry, and it was without question the best meal she had eaten in weeks. She washed her hands and face at the basin. She changed out of Mrs. Halbrook's borrowed dress. She folded it carefully in case she ever had to return it in good condition. She put on her own plain cotton nightgown. She went into the room with the bolt on the door. She sat on the edge of the bed. Through the wall she could hear the men. Not their words, just the shape of them. A chair scraping. The clink of a coffee cup. Malachi's voice low and short. Corbin's voice a little longer, easier, with the small rise at the end that meant he was making a joke. And Wilder, barely audible. Just the rhythm of him. Confirming, not confirming. She lay down. She reached over. She slid the bolt. Then she lay back and looked at the ceiling. And she thought about 11 minutes of vows counted like stairs in the dark. And she thought about the fact that she was Mrs. Ravencroft now. Legally. Completely. A woman married to a stranger on a mountain she had never seen before today. I do not know what happens next. But I am still here. I am still me. That is not nothing. Outside, the mountains held the darkness the way they always had. And Emmeline Hartwood, Emmeline Ravencroft now, though she was not ready for that name yet, closed her eyes and eventually slept. She woke before dawn, not because anything had disturbed her. Nothing had. No sound, no movement, just the specific certainty of a body that had spent years sleeping light, that she was in a place that was not home. Then she remembered, all of it, in a single quiet wave. The church, the 11 minutes, the wagon ride up into the mountains, the three men, the bolt on the inside of the door. She lay still for a moment and listened. The house was quiet. Nothing. Outside, the pre-dawn cold pressed against the window. She dressed in the dark. Her own things, cotton blouse, worn skirt, her own boots, her own hands. She pulled her hair back and pinned it without a mirror, because she had been pinning her hair without a mirror since she was 12. She slid the bolt open. The main room was gray with pre-dawn. She found the wood stove by feel, found the split kindling beside it, had a fire going in the time it would have taken most women to find the matches. She had been lighting fires since she was 9 years old. She filled the kettle at the pump out back. The pump handle was so cold it stung her palm. The water was so cold her teeth ached looking at it. She stood there in the warming kitchen with the sky just beginning to gray at the edges. And she thought, all right, this is the first morning. Start as you mean to go on. She had found the coffee the night before. She measured it out. She found a pan. She found the lard. On the low shelf, she found a cloth-wrapped portion of salt pork. She had bread and cornmeal and enough to make cornbread from memory. Her mother had taught her when she was 6. Some things did not leave. She had breakfast underway by the time she heard the first boots in the hallway. Corbin. He stopped in the kitchen doorway. He looked at the stove. He looked at the coffee. He looked at her. He smiled. "Oh," he said. "Oh, this is going to be good." She did not answer. She flipped the salt pork. "Wilder is going to be very confused," Corbin said. "He's not used to waking up to smells." "He'll adjust," Emmeline said. "He might." Malachi came in next. He stopped in the doorway. He looked at the kitchen. He looked at her. He said nothing. He walked to the shelf. He took down 4 tin mugs. He set them on the table. He sat down. He looked at Corbin. "She made cornbread," Malachi said. "I see that." "I like cornbread." "I'm aware." That was the entire exchange. Emmeline set the pan on a folded cloth in the middle of the table. Boots in the hallway. Slower. Wilder stopped in the kitchen doorway. He looked at the table. He looked at her. He looked at the coffee. His face did the thing it did. The careful blank. The face that was working very hard to contain something. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I know," she said. "Sit down." He sat down. She put coffee in front of him. Salt pork, cornbread. She sat down at the 4th chair with her own plate. They ate. Nobody spoke for a while. It was not an unfriendly silence. It was the silence of 3 men who ate together every morning of their lives, and a 4th person who had chosen to join them without asking permission. "It's good," Wilder said. Finally, quietly. He said it like a man who did not say such things often. "Thank you," Emmeline said. Corbin caught her eye, just for a second. He winked. She almost laughed. She did not, but almost. When Wilder finished, he took his plate to the basin. He picked up his hat. "I'll be at the barn most of the morning," he said. "You can, He stopped, started again. "The house is yours. Do whatever you want with it." "What needs doing?" Emmeline said. He turned. "What? On the ranch, what needs doing today?" He looked at her the way she imagined he looked at weather rolling in over the mountains. Assessing, not alarmed, waiting for more information. "You don't have to. I am not going to sit in this house and wait to be told I can exist," Emmeline said. Calm, firm. "I grew up working. I intend to keep working. Tell me what needs doing or I will find it myself. And I may find it in the wrong order." Silence. Corbin looked at his plate, very carefully. She could see the corner of his mouth twitching. Malachi looked at Wilder. Just looked. Wilder's jaw moved, not quite a smile, not one. "Kitchen garden needs water," he said. "Mare in the 3rd stall's due to foal in the next week. She'll need looking in on. And the fence along the east pasture has a section that keeps coming loose." "I can water the garden and check the mare," Emmeline said. "You know horses." "I know enough." He studied her for a moment longer. "All right," he said. He put his hat on his head. He touched the brim in that abbreviated automatic gesture she was going to learn to recognize like her own heartbeat. He went out. Malachi finished his coffee, stood up, nodded at her once, went out. Corbin lingered. "You just did in 3 minutes," he said, "what nobody has done in 8 years." "What?" "Told Wilder what you were going to do instead of asking." "Was that wrong?" Corbin grinned, wide and easy. "It was perfect," he said. Then he went out too. Emmeline stood in the kitchen, alone, with 3 empty plates and a fire crackling behind her, and a feeling in her chest that was not happiness exactly, but was adjacent to it. Something like standing on ground that might hold your weight, and discovering that it did. The mare's name was Juniper. She was enormous and brown and had the expression of a woman who had been pregnant in July before and was not delighted by the experience. Emmeline spent an hour with her that first morning, speaking low, moving slow, learning what Juniper would tolerate and what she would not. By the time Emmeline let herself out of the stall, Juniper had allowed her to check her over, had accepted a piece of dried apple from Emmeline's pocket, and had given her one long, measured look that seemed to communicate provisional acceptance. Pending further evidence, Timber the dog had followed her to the barn. He had sat outside the stall the whole time, head on his paws, watching. "You are a very serious dog," Emmeline told him. He blinked. "All right," she said. "We understand each other." She watered the garden. She weeded a section she thought might have gotten past someone. She walked the fence line and found the loose section. She could not fix it. Wrong tools. She did not know where they were, but she looked at it carefully, and she knew what it needed. She found Wilder at the far end of the barn, working on a piece of tack. "East fence," she said. "Third post from the big rock. It's rotted at the base. The wire is pulling loose from it. You need a new post, not just to restring the wire." He was quiet for a moment. "How do you know that?" "Because I looked at it. My father had a fence like that once. He kept restringing the wire and the post kept pulling loose. Took him 2 seasons to admit the post was the problem." Something shifted in his face, barely visible. "But there." "I'll get a post," he said. "I can help set it." He looked at her for what felt like a long time. Not hostile. She was beginning to understand that his silences were not hostile. They were how he thought. "After the noon meal," he said. She nodded. She went back to the house. She did not allow herself to feel pleased. She told herself it was practical. That was all. She was almost smiling when she got back to the kitchen, and she pressed her lips together and concentrated on the beans she was sorting. It was on the 3rd day that she found the grave. She had not been looking for it. She had been walking the property line, learning it, mapping it in her head, because that was what she did with places she needed to understand. She came up through the timber above the house. There was a small flat clearing where the trees thinned. It had a view, down across the whole valley, the kind of view a person picked on purpose. And there in the clearing was a plank of wood set into the earth. Sanded smooth, letters carved with care. Not the work of a man who carved often. The work of a man who had wanted to do it right anyway. Winifred Ravencroft. Beloved. Emmeline stood very still. She did the arithmetic without meaning to. 2 years ago. The Wolf of Ravencroft. The house that had been kept up with steady hands. The room with the bolt on the inside. The flowers. She looked at the marker for a long moment. Then she looked at the view. The whole valley going golden in the afternoon light. The mountains holding it all in place at the edges. She thought about a man who had chosen this spot for exactly that reason. She thought about the fact that he had chosen it alone. She left without touching anything. She did not mention it at supper. But when Wilder came in and sat down and took his hat off and set it in the same place he always set it, something in the way she looked at him had changed. Not pity. She did not think he would want pity, but something. Understanding. Maybe just that. 2 weeks and the first thing broke. She was in the kitchen garden late one afternoon when she heard hooves coming up the road fast. She straightened. She turned. The rider who came into the yard was a boy, maybe 15, dusty, breathing hard. His horse was blown. "Mr. Ravencroft," the boy called, pulling up, looking at her. "I need Mr. Ravencroft." "Which one?" Emmeline said, because she had learned to ask now. The boy blinked. He hesitated. "Any of them." "They're in the barn," she said. "What happened?" "There's men on the lower road," he said. 3 of them. They stopped my uncle's wagon, took his supply money, wouldn't let him pass till he paid. My uncle sent me up. He said the Ravencrofts would want to know." Emmeline turned toward the barn. She did not have to call. Malachi was already coming out. Something in the sound of the horse had told him. He crossed the yard in 5 long strides. "How long ago?" he said. "Not 2 hours." "Which 3?" "2 big, 1 small. The small one had a red kerchief. Malachi's eyes went narrow. "Corbin," he said, not loud. He did not need to be loud. Corbin came out of the barn behind him. He had already read the situation. He was already pulling on his coat. Wilder came last, slower, reading her face before he read the boys. "3 riders on the lower road," Malachi said. "Stopped a wagon, took the money." Wilder nodded once. "Saddle up," he said. They moved with the efficiency of men who had done this before. Not in a hurry, not slow, just efficient. 2 minutes and they were mounted. 2 minutes and they were ready to go. Wilder looked down at Emmeline from the saddle. Something in his face was different from the ordinary set of it. Not rage, its controlled cousin, a very deliberate, very quiet kind of anger. "Stay here," he said. "I know," she said. She looked up at him. "Be careful, all of you." He looked at her for a moment. Corbin was already grinning, that easy grin that hid whatever else he was thinking. "You heard the lady," Corbin said. "We're being careful, all of us." Malachi did not say anything. He touched the brim of his hat. He turned his horse. They rode out. Emmeline stood in the yard with Timber at her side, and the boy behind her holding his blown horse's reins. And she felt the particular quality of waiting she had never quite felt before. Not the waiting of someone who has no stake in the outcome, the waiting of someone who does. The boy was still breathing hard. "Come inside," she said to him. "You need water. So does that horse." "Yes, ma'am." "Ma'am." She did not correct him. She led him and the horse to the trough. She went inside. She poured him a cup of water. She poured herself one too. She stood at the kitchen window, looking at the road they had ridden down. And she did not sit, because sitting would have been pretending it did not matter. 2 hours passed, then 2 hours and 20 minutes, then 2 hours and 40. Timber lifted his head at 3 hours exactly. She heard the horses before she saw them. She was at the porch by the time they came into the yard. All 3 men, whole, unhurt, and behind Malachi's horse. 3 men, roped together, walking, sullen, one of them bleeding lightly at the mouth from what looked like a solid backhand. Wilder had a small cloth pouch in his hand. He handed it to the boy, who had come up beside Emmeline on the porch. "Give this to your uncle," Wilder said. "Every dollar of it. Tell him I'll speak with the marshal in the morning. He does not need to come up here." The boy nodded. He was trying not to stare at the rope men. "Thank you, sir," he said. "Ride carefully," Wilder said. The boy left. The 3 men stood in the yard between the horses. Emmeline stood on the porch. Wilder dismounted. He looked at her. "You waited," he said. "I told you to be careful," she said. "I needed to know if you listened." Something happened in his expression then. A crack in the granite, brief and unmistakable. Not a smile, but something close enough that she felt it in her own chest. "I'll take these 3 to the sheriff in the morning," he said. "They'll need water and something to eat before that," Emmeline said. "Rope men still need feeding." He blinked. "Don't look so surprised," she said. And she turned and went back into the house. Behind her, she thought she heard him exhale. Not quite a laugh, but something in the neighborhood of one. That night, after the rope men had been fed and bedded down in the empty stall Malachi had prepared for them, after supper had been eaten and the dishes washed and Timber had settled in front of the wood stove, Emmeline stood in the kitchen doorway with a coffee cup in her hand. The 3 men were at the table. Corbin was cleaning a rifle, slow, methodical, humming something under his breath she did not recognize. Malachi was reading a folded newspaper by the lamp. His face gave nothing away. Wilder was writing something in a small notebook. His handwriting was cramped, careful, the handwriting of a man who did not write often, but wrote precisely when he did. They looked up when she came in, not startled, just aware. She sat down at the 4th chair, because there was a 4th chair. There had always been a 4th chair. She had noticed that the first morning. 3 men, 4 chairs. She had not asked why. She was still not going to ask. "Tomorrow," she said. "Who goes with the rope men?" "I do," Malachi said. not looking up from the newspaper. How long? Full day. I'll be back before dark. Corbin, she said, you're at the barn. Yes, ma'am. He grinned. Wilder is going to teach you to ride tomorrow. She turned her head. Wilder had gone very still with his pencil. He looked up, slowly. He looked at Corbin. Corbin was very carefully cleaning the rifle, not looking at anyone. He is, Emmeline said. He mentioned it, Corbin said. This morning at the barn. Said if she's going to be on this mountain, she needs to be able to get up and down it on her own. Whole speech, very moving. Malachi turned a page of the newspaper. I remember that speech, Malachi said. Wilder set the pencil down, very deliberately. Corbin, he said. Yes. I hate you. I know. Emmeline looked between them, and for the first time in 3 weeks, for the first time since she had walked into the church in a borrowed dress and started counting to 11. She laughed, a real one, short, surprised, out loud. All 3 men looked at her. She covered her mouth, because she was not sure she was allowed to. But Corbin's grin had gone wide. Malachi had not looked up from the paper, but the corner of his mouth had lifted. And Wilder was looking at her like a man who had just heard a sound he had not heard in a very long time, and did not want it to stop. All right, she said, when she could speak. Tomorrow. Riding lesson. Fine. Fine, Wilder said. After breakfast. After breakfast. I'll wear the split skirt. Good. And when I fall off, none of you will laugh. Corbin opened his mouth. Any of you, Emmeline said. Corbin closed his mouth, then opened it again. Ma'am, I make no such promise. Corbin. Yes. I will put salt in your coffee for a week. Malachi turned another page of the newspaper. She has your number, Malachi said. Quiet. Dry. Not looking up. Corbin sighed. I promise, he said. Emmeline picked up her coffee. She took a slow sip. She looked across the lamp at Wilder. He was watching her. Not with the closed, careful face. With something opener. Something almost undefended. As if the sound of her laugh had loosened something he had been holding for a long time. She looked at her coffee cup. Because if she looked at him 1 second longer, she was going to feel something she was not ready to name. Outside, the mountains held the dark. Inside, the fire crackled and the lamp burned, and 4 people sat around a table that had 4 chairs. And Timber the dog sighed in his sleep with the particular contentment of a dog who considered the arrangement of the room. Correct. Emmeline set down her coffee. She stood up. Good night, she said. Good night, said 3 voices, not in unison, but close. She walked to her room. She closed the door. She did not slide the bolt. Not on purpose. Not as a decision. She just did not think about it. And she got into bed, and she lay there in the dark listening to the low murmur of 3 men through the wall. Corbin saying something, Malachi answering short. Wilder's voice deeper than both. The rhythm of them. The shape of them. The fact of them. She closed her eyes, and she thought, I do not know what this is yet, but I do not think I want to run from it. She thought about the flowers in the blue jug. She thought about the bolt she had not slid. She thought about a man carving a marker for a wife he had lost, and another man teaching her to laugh at herself, and a third man reading a newspaper the way other men prayed. 3 men who had chosen each other before they had ever met her, and who had somehow in 3 weeks made a place at their table. Not the wife's place. Not yet. Just a place. That is not nothing, she thought. That is a beginning. Outside, the wind came down off the mountain and pressed against the window glass, the way it had done every night since the house was built. And Emmeline Ravencroft. She was ready for the name now. Almost. Closed her eyes and slept. The riding lesson began at 8 in the morning on a Thursday in the small paddock behind the barn. Wilder was already there when she came out. He had a gray mare on a lead, sensible looking, patient eye. Opal, he said, as Emmeline came up. She teaches most people. Most people. Some she has opinions about. And me. We'll find out. Emmeline looked at the mayor. The mayor looked at her. Neither of them blinked. All right, Emmeline said. He showed her the saddle. He showed her the stirrup. He showed her how to check the girth. He talked less than she expected. He explained more than she expected. Because there was a difference. She was learning that. Some men talked to fill the air. Wilder talked because there was something specific he wanted her to know. Left hand on the horn, he said. Right foot in first. No. Left. Left foot in first right leg over. Try again. She tried again. She got up. She sat there. She waited to feel like she was doing something wrong. Don't grip, Wilder said. Settle. What does that mean? Means don't hold on with your legs like she's going to run out from under you. She's not. She knows you're up there. She's telling you she's not going anywhere. You tell her the same. By not gripping. By settling. Wilder? Yes. That sentence has no verbs. Somewhere near the fence, Corbin made a small strangled noise. Wilder did not turn his head, but his jaw did the thing. Settle, he said again, is the verb. Fine. She settled, or tried to. Opal walked. Emmeline sat. She did not fall off. This was, she felt, a reasonable first outcome. They worked for an hour. She began to feel the thing he was describing. Not gripping, settling, like telling a horse with your whole body that you were not going anywhere. And neither was she. And then a rabbit exploded out of the tall grass at the edge of the paddock. Opal shied sideways. Emmeline, who had been settling so beautifully, completely forgot to settle. She grabbed the saddle horn. She overcorrected. She ended up in the dust of the paddock, on her backside, looking up at the summer sky, with an expression of profound personal indignation. She heard it. She actually heard it. A sound from the fence post where Wilder was standing that was short and low and completely involuntary. The sound of a man whose self-control had been briefly and thoroughly overridden by amusement. She turned her head. He had both hands on the top fence rail. He was looking at her with an expression she had not seen on his face before. Open, unguarded, a brightness in his eyes that changed him so entirely she almost did not recognize him. Corbin had already fled. She could hear him around the corner of the barn laughing so hard he was going to injure something. If you laugh at me, Emmeline said from the dust, I will put salt in your coffee for a week. The laugh escaped again, more fully. He pressed his lips together. He looked away. He looked back. The corners of his eyes were creased. He was trying very hard to be serious. He was failing completely. She sat up. She pulled a piece of grass out of her hair. Opal, she said to the horse, who had stopped 3 feet away and was watching her with gentle concern. You are a traitor. Opal blinked. Wilder came around the fence. He offered his hand. She took it. He pulled her to her feet, and for one moment they were very close. Her hand in his, both of them in the dust in the summer heat, and the brightness in his eyes was still there. Close up. She had not known his eyes could look like that. She stepped back. She brushed off her skirt. Again, she said. You don't have to. Again. Something in his face went soft with something she had no word for yet. Again, he agreed. She got back on. She fell off 2 more times. She got back on both times. By the end of the 2nd hour, she was staying on. By the end of the 3rd, she was walking Opal in a small circle without gripping. And Corbin had come back and was leaning on the fence, eating an apple he had cut in wedges. And Malachi had come out of the barn to watch. And nobody said anything congratulatory. Because congratulations were not the currency here. They just watched. Until Wilder said, that's enough for today. You'll be sore tomorrow. I already know. Take a hot bath tonight. It helps. She dismounted carefully. Her knees betrayed her. She caught herself on Opal's side. Everything hurts, she said, without emotion. just stating the fact. That's the settling, Corbin said, around a mouthful of apple. Feels like the opposite of settling. Isn't. I hate all of you, Emmeline said. Wilder took Opal's reins, started walking her back to the barn. She's part of the family now, Corbin said. To Malachi. Cheerful. Real hate, not stranger hate. Corbin, Malachi said. Yes. Go split the wood. Yes. Corbin went, whistling. Emmeline looked at Malachi. Malachi looked at her. Just looked. That level, gray-eyed look that cataloged and filed and offered nothing back. You did all right, he said. Finally. Then he walked away. And that was she understood high praise. That afternoon she found the letter. She had been going through the small wooden crate she had brought with her from Silver Fork Junction. Not much, 2 letters from her father from before the debt got bad. A small photograph of her mother faded around the edges. A blue hair ribbon she had kept since she was 7 for no reason she could explain. At the bottom of the crate, folded very small, was the marriage contract, the one Barnaby Ravencroft had drawn up. The one she had signed at Aunt Vesta's kitchen table without reading twice. She unfolded it. She sat on the edge of the bed, and she read. The language was what she expected. Debt settlement. Transfer of obligation. The name Alden Hartwood, her father in the cramped clerk's handwriting of a man who had died 3 years ago and still had signatures out in the world doing work. $340. And then at the bottom, under Barnaby Ravencroft's flourish of a signature, a clause she had not looked at carefully before, or had not understood, the way she understood it now. In the event that the union proves untenable to either party within the first calendar year of the arrangement, Mr. Ravencroft retains the right to dissolve the agreement and return Miss Hartwood to her prior residence, at which point the original debt shall be reinstated in full, to be satisfied by service or such other means as the debt holder deems appropriate. She read it twice. She read it a third time. He retained the right. That was the language. Barnaby had written it, presumably as a protection for his nephew. Wilder could end this, send her back, and the debt would be hers again. Hers alone, with no father to be responsible for it, and no way to pay it. And Aunt Vesta's kitchen table waiting. She was not any more secure than she had been 3 weeks ago. She sat with that. She sat with it a long time. And she was not going to tell herself she had not known. She had known. She just had not thought about it clearly. Thinking about it clearly now made the ground feel less solid. She folded the letter. She put it back in the crate. She stood up. She went to start the noon meal. Because that was what you did. You stood up and you got on with it. But something had shifted. A new awareness. Not of danger exactly. Of precariousness. Of the fact that the things she was building here, the morning coffee, the riding lesson, the fence posts, Opal and Juniper and Timber, and even she admitted to herself now even the way Wilder's face had looked in the paddock this morning. None of it was guaranteed. None of it was hers. She put the beans on to soak. She did not say anything. But Wilder found her at the kitchen table that afternoon with her mending. She had taken one of his shirts. A tear at the shoulder seam. She had not asked. She had noticed and taken it. He stopped in the doorway. She looked up. He came in. He poured himself a cup of coffee cold from that morning. He leaned against the counter. He watched her. She had learned that he watched things carefully, that he noticed details most men did not bother to notice, and she had learned to factor that in. Something wrong, he said. She looked at the shirt. She considered. She considered telling him it was nothing. She had been good at that her whole life. The deflection. The I'm fine. She had built a whole personality around it. She thought about it. Seriously. Then she thought about the flowers. And the bolt. And the way he had said you did all right without saying it. And she set the shirt down. I read the contract again, she said. Your uncle's contract. The clause. He went very still. I understand the arrangement, she said. Careful. I understand what you retain the right to do. I'm not asking you about it. I just wanted you to know that I know. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. He set his coffee down. He looked at the table. He looked at his hands. When he looked up, his face was more open than she had ever seen it. I didn't write that clause, he said. I know. Barnaby did. I told him not to. I told him. He put it in anyway. Said it was. He stopped. He started again. Prudent. Prudent, she repeated. I'm not going to use it, Wilder said. Flat, certain, not without feeling. She had learned to hear the feeling in his flat voice. That's not what this is. What is it, she said. The question sat in the kitchen. He picked up his coffee. He did not drink it. He looked at the window above the basin. I don't know yet, he said, finally. But it's not that. She looked at him for a long moment. She picked up the shirt. She found her place in the seam. All right, she said. All right, he repeated. I believe you. She did not look up, but she heard after a moment the quiet sound of him pulling out the chair across from her and sitting down. And when she glanced up, he was there, coffee in his hands, eyes on the middle distance. He did not leave for a very long time. The water started going wrong in the fourth week. Wilder came to breakfast tight-jawed. He drank his coffee standing up, which he never did. Something happened, Emmeline said. Water problem. Malachi lifted his head from the newspaper. Just barely. Which spring? Malachi said. Upper. Running at less than a quarter. Corbin looked at Wilder. He looked at Malachi. He set down his fork. I'll ride the perimeter, Corbin said. I already did, Wilder said. Yesterday morning. That's why I'm telling you now, because he had known yesterday and had not said, and had thought about it alone through a whole day before saying it at the table. Emmeline made a note of it. About Wilder Ravencroft, the way he carried things by himself, until they got heavy enough that he could not carry them alone anymore. She wanted to help with that. She did not know how yet. How bad, she said. Bad, getting worse. If the summer stays this dry, the lower creek will follow. And by August, we'd be hauling water by the barrel from the river 4 miles down the mountain. You've seen this before, she said. I've seen it done to us before. She did not miss the phrasing. Done to us, she said. By whom? Wilder looked at Malachi. Malachi folded the newspaper. Thaddeus Vane, Malachi said. His property lines up on the north. The upper spring starts right at the boundary. He's been diverting for 3 years. You know he's been diverting. I've walked his fence line, Malachi said. I know what a diversion trench looks like. Then why haven't you? She stopped because the answer was in the room, and nobody was saying it. Judges in this county, Wilder said, tend to see what Vane wants them to see. He has money, we have grass. That's most of the argument, Malachi said. Emmeline set her cup down. So we don't fight it in court, she said. 3 heads turned toward her. She did not know why she had said we. She had said it before she knew she was going to. We don't fight it in court, she said again, because now that she had said it once, she was going to say it right. We find our own water. There's a wet spot in the upper timber, Wilder said, slowly. I've always figured it for a seep, never developed it. The spring was enough. Until now. Until now. How long? Weeks. Weeks of what? Digging, shoring, piping, getting water to run downhill in the direction we need it to run without the whole thing collapsing in the next hard rain. She thought about that. She thought about the weeks. She thought about a woman in a borrowed dress at an altar counting to 11. And she thought about what a woman on a mountain in September might look like, standing next to a channel she had helped dig with her own hands, watching water she had helped root come out of the ground. When do we start, she said. Wilder looked at her for a very long time. Tomorrow, he said. They started at first light the next morning, the 4 of them. Emmeline in her split skirt and her oldest boots and a wide straw hat she had found in the barn. Wilder with the shovels. Corbin with the pickaxes. Malachi with a rifle across his back. Because Malachi had explained level-eyed at supper the night before that a man digging on his own land who has just told his hostile neighbor about his water problem should not be surprised if his hostile neighbor takes an interest. She had not thought of that. She was going to learn to think of that. They walked up through the timber for 40 minutes. The trees closed in overhead. The air cooled. The ground softened underfoot. Wilder stopped at a place where the moss went dark green and heavy. "Here," he said. He took the shovel. He pressed the point in. Water welled up around the blade. Emmeline crouched. She touched the water with 2 fingers, cold, real, coming out of the ground. She looked up at Wilder. He was already looking at her. "All right," she said, quiet. "So it's there. So it's there. Now we make it useful. Now we make it useful." Corbin planted his pickaxe in the earth. He clapped his hands together. "I love this part," Corbin said. "Which part?" Malachi said. "Dry. The part before we know how badly we've underestimated it." Malachi snorted. One time. It was the closest thing to a laugh she had heard from him in 3 weeks. They worked. They worked all that day and all the next day and every day for 11 days. She learned things she had not known she was capable of learning. Corbin taught her how to read the ground for moisture, where it wanted to flow, where it did not. "Water," Corbin said, on the 3rd day, sitting back on his heels with his sleeves rolled up to the elbow, dirt on his forearms, sweat at his temples. "Wants to go home. Home is downhill. Your job is not to force it. Your job is to convince it that home is in the direction that also serves you." That is the strangest sentence I've ever heard. That's water for you. You talk about water like it has feelings. So does Wilder. So does Malachi. We just don't say it out loud. Malachi, splitting a shoring plank with an axe 15 feet away, without looking up, said Corbin. "Yes. Stop talking." "Yes." Emmeline laughed, around her mouth full of water from the canteen. Malachi taught her to read the ground for other things. Boot prints, hoof prints, where a man had stood, where a man had walked away. He did not lecture. He pointed. He waited to see if she saw it. When she did, he moved on. "2 men here yesterday," he said, "on the 5th day, kneeling by a soft place at the edge of the timber. Both stood a long time. Both walked away east." She looked. She saw the boot prints. She looked east. "Vane's boundary is east," she said. "Yes, they came to look at us." "Yes. Should we be worried?" Malachi thought about that. "Not worried," he said. "Aware." He stood up. He moved on. Wilder taught her how to seat pipe fittings, how to shore up a channel wall so it would not collapse in the next hard rain, how to check the slope with a length of string and a small stone tied to one end. He was patient in a way she had not expected. He explained things when she asked. He did not explain them when she did not. And when something did not work, he stopped and looked at it and thought about why, before he tried again. She had worked for other people her whole life, since she was 11, in houses, in laundries, in a dry goods store for 6 months. She knew the difference between a person who worked with you and a person who directed you. Wilder worked with her. This was not a small thing. On the 9th day, in the late afternoon, the water ran, not much, a thin, clear thread of it, down the channel they had built. Wilder had opened the intake and stepped back, and Emmeline crouched at the lower end and watched the water come. Slow at first, then steady. She put her hand in it. Cold. She sat back on her heels. Something in her chest was so purely good she had no word for it. She looked up at Wilder. He was standing over the channel, watching the water move. His expression was as close to relief as his face got. "It's running," she said. Unnecessary. She said it anyway. "It's running," he agreed. Corbin was on the ridge above them. He raised both arms. He whooped, once, loud enough to startle a jay out of a spruce 20 feet away. Malachi, from the top of the channel, where he had been watching the tree line the whole time. Said Corbin, "I know. Quiet. I know." But Corbin was grinning, and Malachi's mouth had that lifted corner, and Wilder was looking at Emmeline across the water they had built together. She looked back at the water. Before her expression could say too much, she thought, "We did this. Not he, not she, not you. We." 2 nights after that, at 3 in the morning, Juniper Fold. Emmeline knew immediately something was wrong. She had been checking on the mare twice a day for a week. She had moved her sleeping schedule to include a midnight check and a 3 o'clock check. Wilder had told her she did not have to. She had told him this was not the current situation. He had not pushed. At 3 that morning, she came into the barn with the lantern low, and she stopped in the doorway. Juniper was on her side, sweating, straining, making a sound Emmeline had not heard before. Emmeline set the lantern on the hook. She spoke low to the mare. She approached slow. She checked what she could without disturbing anything. The foal was positioned wrong. Emmeline's hands were smaller than any of the men's. She knew that. She knew she should go get someone. She was already running. She went through the house without ceremony. Corbin's door was closer, but Corbin was in Silver Fork Junction until morning. He had ridden down at noon for supplies and would not be back until dawn. She knocked on Wilder's door. Once. Hard. "Juniper," she said, through the wood. "Now." The door opened before she finished the word. He was pulling his boots on, coat already in his hand. "Malachi," he said, not loud. Down the hall, Malachi's door opened. He came out fully dressed, because Malachi always came out fully dressed. She was not sure Malachi actually slept. The three of them went to the barn. They worked for 2 hours. Wilder's hands were too big. Emmeline's were smaller. Malachi held Juniper's head, talked to her low and steady. He had not said this many words in 3 weeks. "Easy now," Malachi told the mare. "Easy, you've done this before, you know how. This one just needs a little help finding the door." Juniper listened to him, which was Emmeline understood, watching something Juniper only did for people she had decided about. Emmeline was on her knees in the straw, her hands where they needed to be. Wilder guiding her, voice low at her shoulder. "Not too much. Wait for the contraction. Now turn, slow, slow." She turned. She felt the foal shift. Juniper made a sound. Emmeline said, "Quiet," to the mare, not to the men. You're all right, stay with me. We're almost there." 10 more minutes. Then the foal was moving right. Then the foal was coming. Then the foal was on the straw. Dark brown, impossibly thin-legged, blinking, alive. Juniper turned her head. She pushed her nose against her foal. She made a sound that was almost human in its exhausted relief. Emmeline sat back against the stall wall. Her hands were shaking. She had not noticed until now. She wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist. There was blood on her wrist from somewhere she had not noticed. She did not care. Malachi let go of Juniper's head. He stood up. He looked at the foal for a long moment. Then he looked at Emmeline. "That was well done," Malachi said. "Just that." Then he walked out of the stall to give them room. Wilder was sitting against the opposite wall. He was looking at her, not at the foal, at her. His expression was the one from the paddock, only more so, only more. "You talked to her the whole time," he said. "She needed to know someone was here." "Yeah," he said softly. "She did." She looked at the foal. "What do we call her?" Emmeline said. "You name her," Wilder said. "You brought her." She looked at the little dark filly, trying her legs, doing the extraordinary ordinary work of learning to stand. "Willow," Emmeline said. "Why Willow?" "Because willows bend." He was quiet. "All right," he said after a moment. "Willow." They sat there against opposite walls of the stall for a while, just watching, not talking. Juniper licking her foal clean, the lantern low, the dawn coming somewhere outside but not yet arrived. Then Wilder said, very quietly, not looking at her. "Emmeline?" "Yes." "Thank you." Just that. She did not answer, because she was afraid of what her voice would do. She just nodded once in the dark of the stall, where he probably could not see it. But he saw it, because he saw everything. The trip to Silver Fork Junction happened on the Thursday of the 7th week. They needed pipe fittings for the last stretch of channel. Wilder was going. Emmeline said she was going with him. He did not ask why. She did not offer. They left before the worst of the heat. Malachi went with them. She had learned that Malachi went places when he thought going places was necessary. She did not ask why. The road down the mountain was cooler than the road up had been 3 months ago. She had not realized until this ride how her body had learned the shape of it. The bends, the rise, the place where the aspens closed in, and the place where they opened again. She knew where they were the whole time, without looking. She was on Opal. She had been on Opal for 2 hours before she realized she had not thought once about not falling off. She rode into Silver Fork Junction as if she had done it 100 times. Malachi drifted ahead of them as they came into town, not conspicuously, just far enough forward that his eyes could sweep the street before they got there. Wilder went to the hardware store. Emmeline went to the dry goods store because she needed thread and salt and a small tin of the good tea Corbin liked and never asked for. She paid with money from the small household fund Wilder had given her without commentary. She was walking out of the dry goods store when she nearly collided with Sybil Merriweather. Mrs. Merriweather stopped dead on the walkway, looked at her. Emmeline stopped too. "Well," said Mrs. Merriweather, loud enough for the 3 women outside the millinery to hear. "Emmeline Hartwood, still up there on that mountain." "Emmeline Ravencroft," Emmeline said, pleasantly. Mrs. Merriweather's smile did that thing knives do when they are trying to look like spoons. "Of course, forgive me." She looked Emmeline up and down, took in the clean dress, the straight spine, the absence of anything that could be construed as suffering. Her smile did not falter, but something behind her eyes recalculated. "How are you finding it up there?" Mrs. Merriweather said. "All alone with him." "We manage." "He must be." "Well." Mrs. Merriweather paused, choosing. "Difficult to live with. A man like that?" "A man like what?" Mrs. Merriweather blinked. "Well, odd. Closed off, you know what people say." "I know what people say," Emmeline agreed. "People say a lot of things. They are frequently wrong." She stepped around Mrs. Merriweather. She started walking toward where she had tied Opal. She heard the voice again behind her, louder now, pitched deliberately for the benefit of the 3 women outside the millinery, and for the 2 men who had come out of the saloon, and for the boy sweeping the walkway in front of the hardware. "I'm sure it is." Well, it can't be what she imagined for herself. A girl like that, married off like she was, sold for a debt, living up there with those 3 like a... Well, you do what you have to do, I suppose. The street went still. That specific stillness small-town streets do when something is about to happen. Emmeline stopped. She turned around, slowly. The 3 women outside the millinery were watching. The 2 men from the saloon had paused with their drinks. The boy with the broom had stopped sweeping. Everyone was watching. She could feel the old shame. She could feel it pulling at her. The debt, the marriage, the girl like that. Her whole life reduced to a story people had decided to tell about her without asking. She opened her mouth, and she heard boots on the walkway, and Wilder Ravencroft walked past her and stopped between her and Sybil Merriweather. He did not raise his voice. He did the opposite of raise his voice. He spoke so quietly that every person on that street had to go still to hear him. Every person on that street went still. "Mrs. Merriweather." Sybil Merriweather's smile flickered. "My wife," Wilder said, "came down this mountain today because this is her town as much as it's yours. She has as much right to this street as any person on it." His voice stayed level. "The next time you would like to say something about her, you will do it to her face or you won't say it. That's the only way this is going to work. Sybil Merriweather stared at him. The three women outside the millinery stared at him. The two men from the saloon stared at him. Down at the corner, where he had drifted 5 minutes ago, and where he had been standing the whole time, watching the street, Malachi Doon stood with his hands loose at his sides and his eyes on Sybil Merriweather's face with an expression that was doing more work than any words could have. Wilder tipped the brim of his hat. He turned. He offered Emmeline his arm. She took it. They walked to the horses. Malachi drifted in from the corner. They mounted. They rode out of Silver Fork Junction the way they had come in. The town watched them go. A mile up the mountain road, Emmeline said, quietly. You didn't have to. I know. I was going to handle it myself. I know that too. But she wasn't talking to you anymore. She was talking about you, in front of people. That's different. Behind them, Malachi rode at a distance that was neither close nor far, watching the road behind, because that was what Malachi did. You didn't like it, Emmeline said. Not a question. No. Not just today, the way it was set up in the first place. The wedding, the arrangement. Silence, the aspens shivered on either side. No, Wilder said. Again, and this time the word had more rooms in it. I didn't like it then either. Barnaby set it up, she said. He stopped. He started again. You didn't have a choice. That was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I agreed to it. And I agreed to it anyway. Because Barnaby said you'd be worse off without it. And I don't know if that was true, or if it was just what I needed to hear. To go along with something I shouldn't have gone along with. She kept her hand still on Opal's reins. This was the most he had said to her at once about any personal subject in 3 months. You couldn't have known me, she said finally. No, you didn't know what I needed, or what was best for me. No, I didn't. He looked at her. Then, briefly, pulling his eyes from the road. But I know you now, he said. Some, more than I did. He turned back. And you're... He paused. For a long time. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? He thought about it. Carefully. The way he thought about fence posts and water problems and everything else that mattered. Someone who would manage, he said. Someone who would get through it. Survive. A pause. Not someone who would. He seemed to run out of words, or out of willingness to use the words he had. Not someone who would, what, she said. He looked at the road. His jaw moved. Fix things. Emmeline looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the road ahead of them, at the mountain getting bigger and greener as they climbed, at the sky going golden toward late afternoon. Wilder. Yeah. Tell me about Winifred. The silence that followed lasted through 2 bends in the road. She did not push it. She had learned not to push. She was kind, he said, at last. His voice had changed, not broken, not raw, careful. The voice of a man stepping onto ice he knew would hold, but was testing anyway. She was the kindest person I've ever known. She didn't have a sharp edge on her anywhere. Another pause. She died because I made a decision about which road to take coming back from Durango. It was faster. Went through the high pass. She thought it was fine. It wasn't fine. Emmeline did not say she was sorry. She could tell he did not want that. So you closed, she said instead. After I closed. And now. You are. He stopped. Started again. I don't know what I am. That's honest. That's the truth. I don't know. She nodded. She folded her hands over Opal's reins. All right, she said. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. Behind them, Malachi was still riding at his careful distance. In front of them, the mountain rose. Above them, the ravens who lived above the ranch and had given the place its name were circling in slow, patient circles the way they did every afternoon. They rode the rest of the way home in silence. But the silence was not empty. The letter came the next Tuesday. The boy who ran mail up the mountain once a week brought it. He had been making the run since May. Emmeline had started sending down a small bundle of dried mint with him for his mother who had a chest complaint. He had started bringing the mail directly to her at the porch instead of leaving it at the barn. He handed her 3 letters. She sat on the porch step and looked at them. The first was from Mrs. Halbrook, the boarding house widow. Emmeline wrote to her once a month. The letters were short and full of small ranch news. Mrs. Halbrook wrote back with small town news. It was Emmeline had come to understand the only correspondence in her life that felt like being known. The second was a mail-order catalog Corbin had sent for. The third was from an office she did not recognize. The return address said Ezekiel Pemberton Land Office, La Plata County. She stopped. She had written to Ezekiel Pemberton 9 days ago. She had not told Wilder. She had not told Corbin. She had not told Malachi. She had done it after the day at the town, after Sybil Merriweather, because sitting on the porch that night after they got home, she had realized something. She had realized that whatever was coming, and she knew now that something was coming. The 2 men at the edge of the timber, the diversion, Sybil Merriweather's tone, Barnaby's claws, whatever was coming. The 3 men she now lived with were going to try to carry it alone, because that was what they did. They carried things alone until the things got too heavy, and by then it would be too heavy. So she had done a thing they did not know about. She had written to the oldest landman in the county. She had asked, in careful, measured handwriting, about the boundary lines of the Ravencroft parcel, about the history of the water rights, about whether he had records that predated the current disputes with a certain neighbor to the north. She had signed it Mrs. Emmeline Ravencroft. She had watched the boy carry the letter down the mountain herself, standing on the porch, making sure it left. She opened Ezekiel Pemberton's reply now. She read it slowly. Then she read it twice. Mrs. Ravencroft, I received your letter with considerable interest. I have been recording land in this county for 35 years, first for the Colorado Territory, and now for the state. I have known the Ravencroft boundary since your husband's father filed the original deed in 1861. I have known Thaddeus Vane for very nearly as long. It is my professional opinion that Mr. Vane has been operating a diversion off the upper spring on the Ravencroft parcel for approximately 3 years. It is my personal opinion that he is preparing to file a boundary claim in the near future using a survey I do not believe to be honest. I am glad you wrote. I have been waiting for someone up on that mountain to ask. If you would come and see me in Silver Fork Junction at your convenience, I have documents you should see. I would also like to introduce you by correspondence to a man named Amos Trelawney, who runs sheep in the valley south of Vane's property. He has been in a similar situation with Vane for 12 years. He has never had anyone to walk into a courtroom beside him. He has been keeping records the whole time. He has been waiting. Yours in service, Ezekiel Pemberton, Land Office, La Plata County. Emmeline folded the letter. She sat on the porch step. She looked out at the ranch, the barn, the horses, the line of the mountains. She looked at Timber, who had come out from under the porch and put his chin on her boot. She thought, I have not told them yet. I need to tell them. I need to tell them tonight, because whatever is coming, we are not going to carry it alone. She stood up. She put the letter in her pocket. She went inside to start supper. That evening, after the plates were cleared, after Corbin had lit the second lamp, after Malachi had opened his newspaper and Wilder had opened his small notebook, Emmeline took the letter out of her apron pocket and set it on the kitchen table between them. The 3 men looked at the letter. Then they looked at her. I wrote to Ezekiel Pemberton, she said. Malachi set the newspaper down. Slowly, Wilder set the pencil down. When? Wilder said. 9 days ago. About what? About the boundary lines and the water rights, and whether he had records that predated the current dispute. Wilder went very still. Emmeline, I did not tell you because you would have said not to. That is not. That is exactly what you would have said. He stopped. Because it was. Corbin was leaning back in his chair with an expression she could not read. His mouth was doing something at the corner. Not laughter. Something quieter than that. Malachi picked up the letter. He read it, once all the way through. Slowly, then he read it again. Then he set it down. He looked at Wilder. Amos Trelawney, Malachi said. Sheep, South Valley, 12 years of records. He kept records, Wilder said. He kept records, and he has been waiting for someone to come and ask. Wilder looked at the letter on the table. He looked at Emmeline. His face was doing something she did not have a name for. Not anger, not gratitude, not either of the small, easy things. Something bigger. You did this, he said, quiet, without telling us. I did. Why? She thought about her answer. She thought about it carefully. Because I'm not going to sit in this house and wait to be told I can help, she said. I told you that in the first week. I meant it. This is my house too. This is my water too. And I'm not going to watch the three of you carry it alone and then act surprised when it breaks you. The kitchen was very quiet. Corbin cleared his throat. I think, Corbin said, carefully, looking at the ceiling, that is the most beautiful thing anyone has said in this kitchen in 8 years. Corbin, Malachi said, yes. Stop talking. Yes. But Corbin was grinning, and Malachi's mouth was doing the thing, and Wilder was looking at Emmeline across the table with his hands very still on the notebook, and his eyes were very dark, and she could not read them at all. Then he reached across the table. He put his hand over hers, just for a second, rough, warm, heavy hand over her small one. Tomorrow, he said, we ride down, all four of us. All four of us, she said. We're going to meet Ezekiel Pemberton, and we are going to write to Amos Trelawney together. Together, she said. He let go of her hand. He picked up the pencil. He wrote something in the small notebook. She could not see what. Then he closed the notebook. He stood up. Get some sleep, he said, to all three of them. Tomorrow starts something. He walked to the door. He stopped in the doorway. He looked back at her. He did not say anything. But the look was enough. And Emmeline Ravencroft, sitting at the kitchen table with a letter that was going to change everything, between three men who had never in their lives asked a woman for help, and who had just been asked by her to accept it, smiled, just once, small, private, only for herself. Outside, the wind moved through the aspens the way it always did after dark. Something was coming, and they were not going to face it alone. They rode down to Silver Fork Junction the next morning, all four of them. Emmeline on Opal, Wilder on the Bay, Corbin on the Sorrel who nipped at fence posts for entertainment, Malachi on the dark brown gelding who did not nip at anything because Malachi's horse would not have dared. Ezekiel Pemberton's land office was on the far end of the main street, past the saloon, past the millinery, past Sybil Merriweather's dry goods store, which Sybil Merriweather was standing in front of when they rode by, broom in hand, not sweeping, watching. Emmeline did not look at her. She kept her chin lifted. She rode past. Behind her, Malachi tipped the brim of his hat at Sybil Merriweather in a way that was not friendly. Sybil Merriweather went back inside. Pemberton was 70, small, neat, wire glasses, the kind of expression that had seen every kind of human dishonesty and been unimpressed by any of it. He looked up when the door opened. He looked at Wilder. He looked at Malachi. He looked at Corbin. And then with the specific attention of a man who had been waiting for exactly this moment, he looked at Emmeline. Mrs. Ravencroft, he said, thank you for coming. Thank you for writing. Sit down, all of you. There is a great deal to discuss. They sat. Pemberton opened a drawer. He put a document on the desk. The original Ravencroft deed, he said, filed by your husband's father in 1861. I recorded it myself. I was 35 years old. It was one of the first parcels I registered when this territory was still a territory. I know this boundary. He tapped the document. Now, Mr. Vane hired a surveyor out of Denver 2 months ago. That survey was completed last week. I have not been given a copy, which itself is unusual. But my sources tell me the survey places the northern boundary of the Ravencroft parcel 14 feet south of where my records place it. Wilder went very still. The seep, he said. The seep, Pemberton agreed, is inside the 14 feet. If Vane's survey stands, the seep is on his property. The channel you have been building runs from his land onto yours. He has the water. Emmeline felt her hands go cold. Corbin said something quiet in the direction of the ceiling that sounded like it was addressed to a deity. Malachi did not move. "Can he file on that survey?" Malachi said. "He can. He has not yet. He is posturing, which is what Vane does. He makes noise. He gets people to settle, because most people cannot afford the fight." Pemberton looked at Wilder. "You are not most people, and you have not settled before." "I had less to lose before," Wilder said. The words came out quiet, and Emmeline did not look at him, because she could feel him not looking at her, because they both knew what he meant. "There is more," Pemberton said. "You should know all of it." He put another folder on the desk. "Amos Trelawney," Pemberton said. "Sheep, south of Vane. 12 years ago, Vane filed a boundary claim against him using a survey I did not believe was honest. Trelawney could not afford the fight. He settled. He signed a non-disclosure clause. Vane took a strip of land Trelawney's son had planned to develop. The son left for Colorado Springs the following year. Trelawney has never spoken of it publicly." "Because of the non-disclosure," Emmeline said. "Because of the non-disclosure. But Trelawney has been keeping records the entire time. Every letter, every conversation he wrote down after the fact, every dated document. He has been keeping them in a wooden box in his kitchen. He told me once 5 years ago that he was keeping them in case someone ever came and asked." Pemberton looked at each of them in turn. "I wrote to him last week," Pemberton said, "after I received Mrs. Ravencroft's letter." Emmeline swallowed. "What did he say?" she said. Pemberton smiled, very small, very dry. "He said he had been waiting 12 years for the letter. He said he would testify. He said he would violate the non-disclosure clause and pay whatever price came of it. He said his son deserved that much." The office was quiet. Wilder had put both his hands flat on the arms of the chair. He was looking at the desk. "Ezekiel," Wilder said. "Yes." "What do we do?" "You go to a lawyer, now, before Vane files. You do not wait. You get in front of it. Vane's game is to move first, so you move first." "Which lawyer?" "Nathaniel Fairfax, in the county seat. Not Denver. Denver is where Vane's people are. Fairfax is in Durango. He is 34 years old. He is stubborn. He does not like men like Vane. He owes me a favor from 1874. I have already written to him." Pemberton pushed a folded letter across the desk. "That is his address," he said. "He is expecting you Friday." Wilder took the letter. He looked at it. He looked at Emmeline. She was already looking at him. "Friday," she said. Friday, he agreed. They stood. Pemberton stood. He shook Wilder's hand. He shook Corbin's hand. He shook Malachi's hand. He held Emmeline's hand for a second longer than the others. "Mrs. Ravencroft," he said, "you did the right thing, writing to me. I have been on the other end of that letter my whole life, waiting for a woman with the sense to send it." Emmeline could not answer. She squeezed his hand once. She let go. They rode home, the four of them. And when they came up the last rise and the ranch came into view, Corbin turned in his saddle. He looked back at Emmeline. "You know what you started," he said. "I do. You want to stop?" "No." "Good." He turned around. They rode into the yard. Timber was at the gate. The next Friday, they rode to Durango. Emmeline had never been to Durango. It was 2 days by wagon, 1 long day on horseback with a stop halfway. The town was bigger than Silver Fork Junction and smaller than Denver, and it sat in a valley she had only heard about. Nathaniel Fairfax's office was above a bakery. The smell of bread came up through the floor. Fairfax was tall, thin, ink stains on his right hand, glasses pushed up on his forehead, a stack of paper on his desk that had not been touched in a week. When they walked in, he looked up. blinked, then stood up so fast he knocked his chair back. "Ravencroft," he said. "Finally, Fairfax." They shook hands. Fairfax looked at Emmeline, then at Malachi, then at Corbin, then back at Wilder. "Your wife," Fairfax said. "The one who wrote the letter." "Emmeline," Wilder said. Fairfax offered her his hand. "I have been waiting to meet you for a week," Fairfax said. "Pemberton wrote to me about you. I do not think he has been that impressed by a woman since his wife died in 1867. Please sit." Emmeline sat. She did not blush. She had trained herself not to blush, but she felt the heat come up under her collarbone anyway. Fairfax laid the documents out on his desk. Pemberton's original 1861 survey, the correspondence they had brought. Emmeline's written account of the day at the town when Sybil Merriweather had said what she had said. Because Emmeline had written that too, not because it mattered legally, because Fairfax had asked for a picture of the neighbors. Fairfax read for 2 hours. Nobody spoke. Malachi read the newspaper he had brought. Corbin sharpened a knife. Wilder sat very still. Emmeline watched Fairfax's face. At the end of 2 hours, Fairfax took his glasses off. He rubbed his eyes. He put the glasses back on. "The survey Vane commissioned," Fairfax said, "is measuring from the wrong rock." Wilder looked up. "Explain," Wilder said. "There are 2 granite outcrops on your northern boundary. Pemberton's 1861 survey starts from the larger one, the one your father called the anchor. Vane's surveyor started from the smaller one, 22 feet north-northeast, which means his measurements do not just disagree with Pemberton's. They cannot possibly agree with Pemberton's. They started from a different place. So the boundary he is claiming does not exist, not on any legally recorded document. He has surveyed a piece of land that is not the piece of land he claims to have surveyed. That is not just wrong. That is provably wrong, geometrically." Emmeline sat forward. "So Pemberton's records will hold." "Pemberton's records will hold. If we get in front of it, if we file our response before he files his claim, then we are not defending, we are attacking. We are the ones asking the court to declare the boundary in a specific place. And Vane will have to prove his survey against ours." Wilder let out a breath. "How long?" 2 weeks to prepare the filing, another 6 to 8 before a judge hears it. I will move to have it heard in Durango, not Denver. Vane has friends in Denver. He does not have friends here." "Who is the judge?" "Ephraim Whitcomb, 62 years old, 3rd District. He hates men like Vane. He hates them so much I suspect it is personal, which is why I am moving to have him hear it." Corbin looked up from the knife. "Fairfax," Corbin said, "do you like doing this?" "Doing what?" "Fighting men like Vane." Fairfax paused. He looked at his desk. He picked up Pemberton's 1861 survey. He held it up to the light. "My father," Fairfax said, "was a shopkeeper in Illinois. In 1859, a man like Vane took his store, legally. My father did not know how to fight it. He died 6 years later. I went to law school so that other people's fathers would not have to die that way." The room was quiet. Then Malachi, who had not spoken the entire meeting, folded his newspaper, set it in his lap, and said quietly, "Fairfax, yes, you are hired." Fairfax almost smiled. "I was hired the day Pemberton wrote to me," he said. "But thank you." They rode home the next morning. And that afternoon, Emmeline sat down at the kitchen table and wrote a letter to Amos Trelawney. She wrote it in her own handwriting. She signed it, Mrs. Emmeline Ravencroft. She sent it down the mountain with the boy. 6 days later, Amos Trelawney arrived at the yard on a sorrel horse with a wooden box strapped behind the saddle. He was 68 years old. His face was the face of a man who had been outside every day of his life. His eyes were pale blue. His hands were the color of tea. He dismounted. He stood in the yard. He looked at the ranch. Wilder came out of the barn. Corbin came out of the barn. Malachi came out of the house. Emmeline came down the porch steps. Trelawney looked at the 4 of them. "So, he said. Quiet. It's you. It's us, Emmeline said. Trelawney nodded once. I brought the box, he said. He untied it. He carried it to the porch. He set it on the step. He opened the lid. Papers. 12 years of papers. Every letter. Every dated document. Every notarized affidavit. Every canceled check. Every land record. Every survey. Every conversation he had written down after the fact. He stood over the box. He said in a voice that shook slightly, My boy was 17 when Vane took that strip. He had drawings of an orchard he wanted to plant. Apple. 2 varieties. And a peach in the corner because he liked peaches. He stopped. He cleared his throat. He is 29 now. He is in Colorado Springs. He works in lumber. He writes to me once a month. He never comes back. Emmeline felt something in her chest that was hot and quiet at the same time. Mr. Trelawney, she said. Ma'am, after this is done? Yes. Do you think he would come home? Trelawney looked at her. His eyes were very blue. I have been afraid to hope that for 12 years, he said. So I will not answer you. But I will say this. I brought the box. I would not have brought the box if some part of me did not still believe. Emmeline put her hand on his sleeve. Just once. Trelawney did not move, but his eyes closed for a second. Come inside, Emmeline said. You have ridden a long way, and Corbin will overfeed you. That's what he does. That's true, Corbin said. Trelawney laughed. It was a rusty sound. They took the box inside. The filing went in 2 weeks later. Nathaniel Fairfax rode up to the mountain to deliver the news himself. He came into the yard on a small chestnut mare, papers in his saddlebag. He was grinning. Filed, Fairfax said. This morning. Whitcomb accepted it. Vane, Wilder said. Has not filed. He was going to. My clerk saw him at the courthouse yesterday. He went in with papers. He came out with the papers still in his hand. Somebody told him. He knows now. Knows what? That we move first. That we have Pemberton. That we have Trelawney's box. That he is not the man moving. He is the man responding. Emmeline was on the porch. Malachi was at the barn door. Corbin was standing behind Wilder eating an apple. When does Whitcomb hear it? Wilder said. 6 weeks, October 22nd. 6 weeks. The words settled over the yard. 6 weeks. Corbin looked at Emmeline. He raised his apple in salute. Mrs. Ravencroft, Corbin said, I would like to formally state that the first time I met you, I was pouring water on the porch and I thought, there's a small one. She won't last a month. Fairfax winced. Corbin, Malachi said, I am going somewhere. Get there. I have never, Corbin said, in my life, been more wrong about a person, and that is the highest compliment I know how to give. Emmeline looked at him. Her throat did the thing where it did not want to work. She looked at Wilder. Wilder was already looking at her. He speaks for all 3 of us, Wilder said, quietly. She could not answer. She just nodded once and went inside because she was going to cry, and she did not want them to see her do it. The riders came on a Thursday morning, 2 weeks before the hearing. Emmeline was in the kitchen garden. She heard hooves first, 4 horses, not 3, 4. She straightened. She turned. She walked to the porch. Timber came up beside her. The riders came into the yard. Thaddeus Vane, heavy, red-faced, sitting his horse like a man who was already tired of the conversation he had come to have. 2 men behind him. She recognized one from the day in the yard when Vane had not come, some kind of clerk. The other was new, older, well-dressed, a lawyer, and the 4th man. The 4th man was Barnaby Ravencroft, Wilder's uncle. Emmeline had never seen him before. She had only ever seen his signature. Barnaby was 61, silver-haired, a face that carried its regret carefully, like a man who thought regret was a personal failing. She stood on the porch. She did not move. Timber sat beside her. She heard boots inside the house. Fast. Wilder. Then Malachi from the barn. Then Corbin from the woodshed. All three converging on the porch behind her. Wilder came out first. He looked at the four riders, and he saw Barnaby. And Wilder's face did something Emmeline had never seen it do before. It went completely blank. The kind of blank that meant everything was happening at once inside, and none of it was allowed to show. Barnaby, Wilder said, quietly. Not Uncle Barnaby, not Sir, just the first name. Cold. Level. Barnaby did not dismount. Wilder, Barnaby said. I came up because I did not want you to hear about it from him. He nodded at Vane. Wilder's jaw moved, just once. Hear about what? Vane cleared his throat. I have information, Vane said. Loud, public, directed at the porch. That your marriage, Mrs. Ravencroft, was contracted under a clause that permits dissolution and return of the debt to Miss Hartwood as she was. Silence. Emmeline felt the ground do something under her feet. I am prepared, Vane went on, to pay that debt to the debt holder, which is your uncle, in exchange for a resolution to our boundary matter that keeps this out of court. He looked at Wilder. He looked at Emmeline. He looked back at Wilder. Send her back, Vane said. Take my price on the North Strip. We can all be done with this. The porch went very still. Emmeline's chest was doing something that had no name. Because she understood. She understood all of it at once. Barnaby had told Vane about the clause. Barnaby was not just an uncle who had drawn a contract. Barnaby was a partner with Vane, in the plan to take the ranch. And she, Emmeline, was the leverage. She was the leverage. She was. She looked at Wilder. Wilder was looking at Barnaby. You told him, Wilder said. Barnaby did not answer. You told him, Wilder said again. You told him about the clause. You told him it existed, so he could come up here and offer to buy her. From me. Like she was a... He stopped. He could not finish the sentence. Emmeline stepped forward. She stepped up beside Wilder. She spoke. Mr. Vane. Vane looked at her, surprised, like a horse had spoken. Do you know what the water in that channel does? She said calmly. It runs downhill. It feeds a pasture. It feeds a kitchen garden. It waters 6 horses and it fills a foal trough. It exists because 4 people, 4, dug for 11 days in the July sun to find it and to shape it and to bring it home. Vane opened his mouth. I helped dig it, Emmeline said. So did the man beside me. So did the man behind him. So did the man at the barn door. We built the water, together. You cannot buy the water from us, because we did not buy it either. She looked at Barnaby. Mr. Ravencroft, she said, you wrote the clause. That is public record. You just admitted in front of witnesses that you disclosed the terms of that clause to a third party for the purpose of applying pressure. That is also public record now. I hope you understand what you have just done. Barnaby had gone white. You, Barnaby said, you do not. I do, Emmeline said. I understand exactly. She turned to Vane. You may leave now, both of you, all 4 of you. We will see you at the hearing on the 22nd. Vane started to speak. Wilder's voice cut across him. Get off my land, Wilder said. Barnaby, that includes you. Barnaby looked at Wilder for a long moment. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He turned his horse. He rode out of the yard. Vane hesitated. Malachi came around Emmeline's other side. He did not say anything. He did not draw anything. He just stood there, looking at Vane. Vane turned his horse. He rode out too. His clerk and lawyer followed. The yard went quiet. Emmeline was still standing at the front of the porch. Her hands were shaking. Wilder put his hand on her shoulder just for a second. That, Corbin said, quietly, behind her. was the finest speech I have ever heard given in this yard. I was going to hit him, Malachi said. From her other side, level, quiet. You did it better. I could not tell if I was going to survive it, Emmeline said, because it was true. You did, Wilder said. Yes. She turned around. She looked at Wilder. His face was still doing the thing it had done when he saw Barnaby. The blank. But underneath the blank there was something new. Grief. She recognized it. She had seen it in the timber above the grave 3 months ago. He raised me, Wilder said quietly. After my parents, he raised me. He was not warm, but I thought he was honest. He may have thought he was too, Emmeline said, also quietly. People change for money. That is the most common story there is. It does not make it right. No. But you can forgive someone and know they were wrong at the same time. Those are different things. Wilder closed his eyes for just a second. When he opened them, he looked at her. Thank you, he said. For what? She wanted to ask. She did not, because she knew. The hearing was in Durango. The 4 of them rode down 2 days before. They stayed at a boarding house Fairfax had arranged. Emmeline slept badly. She woke before dawn on the 22nd and stood at the small window of her room and looked at the sky and thought about the long road that had brought her here. 19 years old, a debt, a borrowed dress, 11 minutes. And now, a courtroom. And a wooden box full of 12 years of paper. And an old landman named Pemberton who had waited his whole life for someone to ask. She dressed. She went downstairs. Wilder was already at the small table by the window. He had ordered coffee for 2. She sat down. He did not say anything. He did not have to. They sat. The courtroom was full. She had not expected that. Every seat, every wall, every windowsill. Ranchers from 3 valleys, shopkeepers, 2 newspapermen from Denver who had heard about the case and come down. Pemberton was already in the front row. Trelawney sat next to him with the box on his knees. Fairfax was at the respondent's table looking over his notes with the calm of a man who had been ready for weeks. Vane sat at the other table, his Denver lawyer beside him. His face was closed. Barnaby was not there. Emmeline noted that. Wilder noted it too. Neither of them commented. Judge Ephraim Whitcomb came in. 62, white at the temples, eyes the color of a stormy river. He took the bench. He looked at the room. I have reviewed the filings, Whitcomb said. This is a boundary dispute. It is also, as I understand it, more than that. Let us proceed. Fairfax stood. He spoke for 1 hour. He laid out Pemberton's records, the 1861 survey, the measurements, the anchor rock. He put the 2 surveys side by side on the wall, and he showed the court using a wooden pointer and a slow, steady voice that Vane's survey and Pemberton's survey did not just disagree. They started from different rocks, which meant they could not geometrically be measuring the same boundary, which meant one of them was wrong. And it was not the one that had been filed in 1861 and stood on the county record for 17 years without objection. Vane's lawyer objected 16 times. Whitcomb overruled him 15 times. Fairfax called Pemberton to the stand. Pemberton spoke for 40 minutes, slowly, carefully. 35 years of institutional memory delivered in the flat voice of a man who did not care whether anyone thought he was interesting. He explained the anchor rock. He explained why he knew Vane's survey was measuring from the wrong outcrop. He explained what a surveyor's oath meant. He explained what happened to men who violated it. Vane's lawyer tried to attack Pemberton's memory. Pemberton said without changing his tone, Sir, I have recorded 1,342 parcels in this county over 35 years. I have never lost a boundary case in this court, and I have never been asked before today to explain what a rock is. If you would like me to explain what a rock is, I will, but it will not go well for your client. The gallery laughed. Whitcomb did not laugh, but the corner of his mouth moved. Fairfax called Trelawney. Trelawney sat down. He put the wooden box on the stand next to him. Fairfax asked him to describe what Vane had done to him 12 years ago. Trelawney did. Fairfax asked him to describe what he had done in response. Trelawney lifted the lid of the box. I kept everything, Trelawney said. Every letter, every conversation I could write down after the fact, every dated document. I kept it in case someone came and asked. Someone has now come and asked, Fairfax said. Yes. You are aware that testifying here today may violate the non-disclosure agreement you signed. I am aware. Why are you doing it anyway? Trelawney looked at the courtroom. He looked at Emmeline. Emmeline was in the second row. He held her eyes. Because my boy never got his orchard, Trelawney said, and I would like to make sure someone else gets theirs. The courtroom did not stir. The courtroom went still. The kind of still that happens when something true has been said in a place that needed to hear it. Then Fairfax called Emmeline. She walked to the stand. She was aware of the room. Every face. Ranchers she did not know. Newspapermen. Wilder at the edge of the gallery. Malachi. Corbin. Pemberton. She was aware that her hands were completely steady. She was aware that they had not been steady when she walked into that church 3 months ago. Fairfax asked her to describe the morning of October the 8th. She described it. She described the 4 riders, Vane, his clerk, his lawyer, Barnaby Ravencroft. She described what Vane had said in her yard, word for word, because she had written it down within 2 hours. He said, my exact words as I heard them. Send her back. Take my price on the North Strip. We can all be done with this. The courtroom went perfectly still, because they had heard the words twice now, and they had understood them, and they had understood what those words meant, about what Vane had thought, about her, and about what Barnaby Ravencroft had told him. Vane's lawyer stood. His cross-examination was careful, not cruel. He was too skilled for cruelty in a room watching this closely. Mrs. Ravencroft. Yes. You came to the Ravencroft Ranch under a marriage arrangement. Yes. An arrangement contracted to settle a debt. Yes. You would agree your personal and financial security is tied to the outcome of today. She looked at him. My security, she said, and something in the word made her stop and reconsider it and say what she actually meant. Was tied to my own 2 hands and my own word the day I walked into that church 3 months ago. It has been tied to those same things every day since. My security has never been tied to property or to money. It has never been tied to a man. It has been tied to what I could do, and to what I could say, and to whether I could tell the truth in a room like this one. She paused. If you are suggesting I would misrepresent what Thaddeus Vane said in my yard in front of 4 witnesses, then I would ask you to explain. What version of my account could serve me better than the truth? The lawyer opened his mouth. He closed it. Whitcomb was writing. Fairfax was very carefully not smiling. No further questions, the lawyer said. Emmeline stepped down. She walked past the gallery. She sat down next to Wilder. She did not look at him. He reached under the table. He took her hand. He held it. Whitcomb recessed for 2 hours. They sat in Fairfax's small office above the bakery. Pemberton with them. Trelawney with them. Fairfax pacing. The 2 hours passed the way the worst 2 hours always pass. Nobody could eat. Corbin tried to make jokes. Corbin's jokes did not land. Corbin knew his jokes did not land. Corbin kept telling them anyway, because that was Corbin. At the 2-hour mark, the clerk knocked on Fairfax's door. Judge is coming back, the clerk said. They walked back to the courthouse in silence. They took their seats. Whitcomb took the bench. The gallery was even more packed than it had been. Whitcomb looked at the room. He spoke for 14 minutes. He addressed 6 legal points. Emmeline followed 3 of them. Fairfax would explain the other 3 later. The conclusion was plain. Vane's survey was found insufficiently documented to supersede the county's recorded boundary. The boundary would remain as Pemberton's original 1861 survey described it. The boundary claim was denied. The water channel built on Ravencroft land remained on Ravencroft land. Furthermore, given the testimony regarding the water diversion, Vane's own admission in Mrs. Ravencroft's yard, corroborated by 3 witnesses, the court found sufficient grounds for a separate action regarding unlawful diversion of a natural water source, if the affected party chose to pursue it. The gavel came down. Vane's lawyer was already whispering in his ear. Trelawney sat in his seat for a moment before he stood up. He put his hand on the wooden box. He looked at it. And Emmeline, watching him from across the room, saw the exact moment when 12 years of waiting became something he could set down. She turned to Wilder. He was looking at her. "We won," she said. "We won," he agreed. He stood up. He pulled her to her feet. He held her hands, in both of his, in the middle of the emptying courtroom. Pemberton was shaking Fairfax's hand. Trelawney was quietly rearranging his box. 2 ranchers she did not know were slapping Corbin on the back. Malachi was watching the door with the quiet vigilance of a man who did not stop watching just because he had won. "What do you want to do?" Wilder said, his voice low. For her. "Go home," she said, without hesitation. The words sat between them. Home. It fit the way it had not fit 3 months ago. It fit the way it had grown to fit over 3 months of morning coffee and fence lines and pipe fittings and a foal named Willow and a dog who followed her everywhere and 3 men who had rearranged their lives to make a 4th chair. Home, Wilder agreed. They rode up the mountain that same afternoon because Wilder said he could not sleep in a town. Not after that. And Emmeline said she could not either. Malachi said nothing. He just tightened his cinch and mounted. Corbin said, "Fine, but I'm eating 3 sandwiches on the road." They rode. The road climbed the way it always climbed. The aspens shivered. The spruce closed in and then opened again. The mountains held themselves in place the way they always had. Emmeline rode next to Wilder. Neither of them spoke. Malachi rode ahead. Corbin rode behind. Timber met them at the gate the way he always did. He came up the road at a trot, tail high, head high. He circled Emmeline's horse twice before he settled at her stirrup and walked her in. She dismounted in the yard. She looked at the porch. The porch looked back at her, the way porches do when they know you. Wilder took Opal's reins. "I'll see to her," he said. "I'll help." "No, you've done enough today. Go inside, sit down." "Wilder, please." She let him take the reins. She walked up the porch steps. Corbin was already at the woodpile. Malachi was already at the barn. The rhythm of the ranch closing around them the way it always did. Because that was what the ranch did. It did not care about courtrooms. It cared about the next task. She went inside. The kitchen was cool. The wood stove was cold. She lit the fire from memory. She put the kettle on. She stood at the counter and looked at the small blue jug on the shelf where she had moved it in July. Empty now, because the columbine had finished blooming. She heard Wilder come in. She did not turn around. She heard him hang his hat on the hook. She heard him cross the room. He stopped behind her, not close, not touching, just there. "Emmeline?" "Yes." "Turn around." She turned around. He was standing there with something in his hand. A small book, bound in dark green cloth, worn at the corners in the way of books that had been read many times. She looked at it. She looked at his face. "That was Winifred's," she said, quietly. "Yes." "You kept it?" "Yes." "You have not opened it in 2 years?" "No." "Why?" He looked at the book. He looked at her. "Because I could not," he said. "And now I want to." He held it out. She did not take it. "Not yet." "Wilder." "Yes. I am not her. I know. I do not want to be her. I know that too." He took a breath. He let it out. "I am not asking you to be," he said. "I am asking you to sit at the kitchen table, in the house that is now yours, next to a man who has been closed for 7 years, and listen to me read one poem out loud from a book I have not been able to open because for the first time since she died, there is someone here who I want to read it to. Her throat did the thing. She reached out. She took the book. It was heavier than she had expected. One poem, she said. One poem, tonight. There will be others, if you want, or there will not be. That is your choice. It is my choice. Yes. She looked at the book in her hands. She looked at him. She looked past him through the kitchen doorway out into the main room, where the front door was open and evening light was coming through it, and Timber was lying across the threshold with his chin on his paws. She looked back at Wilder. She smiled. Small, private, only for him. Sit down, she said. I will pour the coffee. He sat down at the table. She poured 2 cups. She set one in front of him. She sat down across from him. She slid the book back across the table. You read, she said. It is your voice she loved. He looked at the book. He looked at her. He opened it. He opened it to a page that fell open easily, the page of a poem that had been read many times. He looked at the words for a long moment. Then he read. His voice was rough at the edges. Careful. Not a performer's voice. His voice. The voice she had come to know as well as she knew the sound of the wind on the roof. The poem was short. It was about light. It was about light coming back. After dark. Emmeline listened. Corbin was on the porch, splitting the last of the kindling for the evening. Slow. Deliberate. She could hear him. He had positioned himself, she realized, exactly where he could hear Wilder's voice without being seen, because Corbin had understood what was happening at the table before either of them had. Malachi was somewhere out by the barn. She could not hear him, but she knew he had heard too, because Malachi always heard. They were listening. The whole house was listening. Wilder finished the poem. He closed the book. He set it on the table between them. He looked at her. His eyes were very dark, not closed, wide open. Emmeline, yes, I love you. He said it the way he said everything, plain, whole, no decoration, as if he had thought about it for a long time, and when the time came to say it, had nothing left to say but the words. She looked at him. She did not have to think. I love you too, she said, in case that was not clear. Something in his face broke open, not sadness, not grief, the opposite. He reached across the table. He put his hand over hers. He did not squeeze. He just held. Outside on the porch, Corbin split one more piece of kindling, cleanly. Out by the barn, Malachi stopped whatever he was doing. She would find out later that he had stopped to lean against the corral rail and look up at the sky, and that he had stood there for a long time. Timber sighed, from the threshold, the way a dog sighs, when the arrangement of the room is finally correct. Emmeline looked at the man across the table. She looked at the book between them. She looked at the empty blue jug on the shelf, and she thought that she would fill it again next spring, with whatever wildflowers came up first, and that she would fill it every spring after that. She thought, here, this is it. Not the courtroom, not the water channel, not the fight or the survey or the ride down the mountain in a wagon 3 months ago with a stranger who would not look at her. This, a lamp and a table and a book in 4 hands. 2 of them hers, 2 of them his, in a house that was full of the small good sounds of 2 men who had chosen to build a family around him, and had opened a place at that family for her. She had come up this mountain with nothing but a straight spine and her own 2 hands. She had not needed anything else. She had built everything else. And this was the end of the building. She had come as a debt. She was staying as a choice. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. She looked at Wilder. She turned her hand over, under his, so their palms met. I am staying, she said. He closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, they were very clear. I know, he said. Outside, the light held for a moment longer at the top of the mountains, and then it slipped down, the way it does. And the first star came out over the ridge, and Timber lifted his head to look at it, and then put it back down. And in the kitchen, two people held hands across a table and did not let go.